Hello, friends. Today we're going to talk about a weapon that 2 years ago seemed impossible for Ukraine to build on its own. But on May 18th of this year, it was officially declared ready for combat. And its name says it all. In Ukrainian, it's called Berybnyuvak, which literally means the Equalizer. We are going to call it by its translation, the Equalizer, because that's exactly what it promises to do. To equalize the most brutal asymmetry of this war, that of the glide bombs that Ivan has been launching with impunity for 3 years over the defenders' positions. To understand why this weapon matters so much, you first have to understand the problem it's meant to solve. Let's go step by step. Since 2023, when their massive use against Avdiivka began, Mordor turned glide bombs into one of the most destructive resources in its arsenal. The Russian recipe is simple and cheap. They take Soviet FAB series free-fall bombs, of which they have tens of thousands in their inventory. They screw on a gliding kit with satellite guidance called UMPK, thanks to which a Su-34 fullback can drop the bomb from within Russian airspace at a safe distance from Ukrainian air defenses. And the munition glides on its own for 60 to 70 kilometers until it hits its target. The result is enormous and precise destructive power launched from a safe distance, in other words, a threat for which the defenders had no viable response. And what did Ukraine have to respond with? It depended on what the Allies could or wanted to donate. That's why their precision air-to-ground attack capability relied entirely on Western systems, including the American JDAM-ER kits, which have been in service with the defenders since early 2023 and have a range of about 70 kilometers if launched from high altitude. Some ATACMS missiles, the British Storm Shadow cruise missiles, the French Scalp EG, and the extraordinary hammer bombs, of which only 50 units were delivered per month. Hardly a sufficient number for all the Russian targets that needed attention. It was all very good equipment, no doubt. But each of those donations came with restrictions on which targets could be attacked, limits on how deep they could strike, always insufficient quantities, and availability subject to the political whims of Washington, Paris, or London. With that situation, Kiev couldn't plan, since his air campaigns depended on decisions made in foreign capitals. That's the context in which the Equalizer was born, developed from scratch by the company DG Industry, part of Brave One, the Ukrainian State Defense Technology Cluster, and it did so in just 17 months. Take note of that figure because a comparable Western program would easily take twice or even 3 times as long. In this war, development cycles are measured in weeks, not years, and Ukrainians have made that compression an uncompromising industrial doctrine. All right, now let's take a look at the weapon. The Equalizer is built around a 250-kilogram warhead, which puts it in the same class as the JDAM-ER in its GDU-62 configuration. Its mission is to strike fortifications, command posts, and other key-fixed targets tens of kilometers from the launch point. And here comes a key technical distinction, since the Equalizer, unlike the Russian solution, is not a kit. The FABs with UMPK are glide kits bolted onto Soviet-era bombs that were never designed to glide. In contrast, the Ukrainian weapon was purpose-built for this mission. It makes sense for it to be that way. The Russians have a mountain of old bombs that they need to put to some use, while the Ukrainians don't have as many, so they have to manufacture them from scratch, which is why they go for something much more technologically advanced. Okay, and how does it fly? Well, we have some clues. Thanks to the official presentation video, the one that was recorded from a chase aircraft, where you can see the bomb. With 4 large cruciform tail fins, deploying its wings very quickly after release, which seems to give it a remarkable gliding capability, since it even appears to be able to ascend during the first part of its trajectory. 2 mounting lugs can also be seen on the underside, which suggests that the weapon flips over after being released to pitch up into its flight attitude, the well-known flip-over maneuver also performed by American and Russian bombs. In concrete terms, the cruciform fins stabilize the weapon in pitch and yaw, and the early deployment of the wings indicates a high aerodynamic efficiency gliding profile, designed to maximize horizontal range from the very moment of release. This design shows the engineers knew exactly what they wanted and how to achieve it. That's what we know, but what Keeb hasn't revealed, and rightly so, is the total weight of the weapon. The circular error probable, the exact guidance method, the fuse options, the wing geometry, the release envelope, and whether there is any terminal seeker. I don't think we'll know that before the end of the war, since those are operational secrets, and I think we can agree that's something we don't want Ivan to know. That said, regarding the guidance, there is something we can state with certainty, and it's probably the most valuable part of the program. The engineers at DG Industry didn't design this weapon in a laboratory during peacetime. They designed it while fighting the war it was meant for. They know firsthand the Russian electronic warfare environment. They know exactly how Ivan jams GPS signals on the front lines. They've seen the first generation of JDAMs fail due to interference, and they built their solution specifically against that threat. That direct feedback from the front line is a design advantage that no Western manufacturer has. The end result has been a guidance system capable of operating effectively even in the presence of Z interference, and a stable airframe across the entire range of release speeds and altitudes. As for the economic calculation, the Equalizer really lives up to its name, since according to available information, the weapon costs about 3 times less than the JDAM ER, which costs between $40,000 and $50,000 in total. That would place the Equalizer in a price range of $13,000 to $17,000 per unit. In other words, for the price of each American JDAM, Ukraine can manufacture 3 Equalizers without asking anyone for permission. This is even more important considering that thanks to the Orange people, Ukrainians now have to buy American weapons, and without any discounts. And from which planes can it be launched? Well, the operational evaluation tests were carried out from a Su-24M Fencer, which is the variable geometry bomber from the 1970s that the Ukrainians keep in service, precisely because it is the only one capable of carrying heavy munitions like the Storm Shadow cruise missiles. But the real potential lies in certifying it so that the F-16 and Mirage 2000 can use it this year, and so that it can also be integrated into the future Gripen and Rafale, which have already been ordered from Sweden and France. Remember, certifying a weapon on a modern fighter bomber is complex because it requires integrating its electronics with Western weapon management systems, validating the release profiles, calibrating the cockpit displays, and ensuring that the bomb separates cleanly from the fuselage at high speed. It has been confirmed that preparing the bomb takes no more than 30 minutes. That means it can be configured and mounted quickly without specialized armors or complex infrastructure on the runway, which is important for an air force that operates from dispersed locations under constant threat, where every minute counts. From a strategic point of view, the decisive question is whether DG Industry can mass produce the system. If they succeed, the Ukrainian Air Force will finally have the capability to strike the Russian tactical rear and deplete their scarce cruise missiles without relying on imported inventories of American JDAMs or French hammers. If production isn't scaled up, the military impact will be limited, but the program will still represent a key milestone for technological independence. However, the defenders have already demonstrated that they can scale up the production of key systems when necessary, as they have already done with aerial and naval drones. If that same model is replicated here, the Russians should start receiving a barrage of aerial attacks on their frontline positions starting from the second half of this year. The Equalizer is exactly the kind of weapon that defines the new Ukrainian defense industry. Rapid development, cheap production, designed by engineers in direct contact with frontline units, and completely free from the political restrictions that have limited the effectiveness of Western systems. Kyiv will finally have full control over its precision air-to-ground strike capability. If production scales up, in less than a year the forces of Mordor will get a good taste of their own medicine. By means of smart glide bombs designed and built entirely in Ukraine, launched by F-16s and Mirages from Ukrainian airspace against targets 60 kilometers from the front. Thank you. For those who want to see additional content, we invite you to subscribe to our Patreon, where for just $1, you'll have access to uncensored war videos. Visit our store and discover items from Ukraine's distinguished units. Each purchase directly supports United 24, contributing to reconstruction, civil aid, and defense. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.